Sally Taylor making your morning. Call Southampton 631 316.
Yes, indeed. Do that just now if you have a cat who has a problem, because Peter Neville, our cat psychologist, is here to answer your questions. Southampton 631 316. There's a line free for you now. Sitting in the hot seat today is Peter Neville, who is agony aunt for Cat World. Peter, what does that mean?
It means that, like the agony aunts who deal with human problems, I get people's cat problems through Cat World, which is a monthly magazine for cat owners or people interested in cats.
Right, and that's what we want this morning. So Southampton 631 316 is the number to ring. 0703 if you're outside Southampton. Give us a call now if you have a problem with your pussycat. Now, it's any sort of problem, isn't it?
Behavioural problem. No medical problems, thanks. Go and see your vet about those.
Now, I mean, we've talked about. I remember the last time you were in, and we talked about the sorts of things that how the cats have, the sorts of problems that they have, and how you could solve them. Now, in that time, what have you been doing?
Well, I've been very busy seeing an awful lot of cases, partly through Cat World and partly through doing your show. The mailbag I had after the Radio Solent show was enormous. And we had everything from the strange diet cases through to aggression problems, through to some very bizarre incidents where cats haven't taken to babies or babies haven't taken to cats. And I've spent a lot of time writing.
Now, what sorts of problems are we going to be looking at today, do you think? I mean, are there a whole wide range of problems with cat owners and cats?
A lot of them that come down to sociability and people having trouble getting on with their cats, or certain members of the family getting on with their cats, or having one particular cat get on with other cats that they have. There's dog-to-cat problems, and then there's peculiarly cat behaviour problems.
Is it also types of cats? I mean, I remember last time we were talking about particularly Siamese, and it seemed to be that they were neurotic and seemed to have an awful lot of problems. And I think you actually did say that at the time. Yes,
the bulk of my caseload concerns pedigree cats, particularly the Oriental strains like Siamese and Burmese. I think it's because they are, as I said at the time, a little bit more intelligent, but also a little bit more sensitive to change and to our comings and goings, whereas the average moggy takes it all in his stride and doesn't worry.
Now, the other thing is that how can you help somebody who is afraid of cats? Can you? I mean, I know you're a cat psychologist, but I mean...
This is allurophobia, is the correct term for this, and it's a very deep-seated problem because we have a history going back many, many hundreds of years of feeling very suspicious of cats. Cats were associated with witchcraft and satanic rites way back in the Middle Ages. And a lot of people find cats very difficult animals to deal with. They regard them as sneaky, they regard them as insidious creatures in many cases. And it like any phobia, it's quite difficult to overcome this sometimes. I've had one case running now for 2 to 3 months where a young lady wouldn't move in with her boyfriend because he had a rather assertive territorial Siamese cat that had actually attacked her and injured her quite nastily. Now, we'd solved the cat's problem. We'd made him a much more docile animal, and he'd had the good fortune to have moved out to the countryside, so he enjoyed a much more fulfilling lifestyle. But the poor chap's girlfriend simply couldn't cope with having the cat in the same room.
I'm not surprised.
No, and eventually it came to the big choice, do you love me or do you love your cat? And the poor chap jokingly made the wrong decision and didn't see his girlfriend for 2 weeks. But they're now back together again, and we're, much more...
They're back together again, the cat has no claws, yes.
The treatment now is about watering down the exposure to the cat and the conditions under which the lady is exposed to the cat so that she hopefully will come round to coping with its presence and then build her into more confined environments indoors.
Because they're very independent cats, aren't they? And is that the mistake that cat owners make?
I don't think cat owners make mistakes. I think that what
Well, they might. I mean, it's not just the cat's fault, is it? I mean, come on, I sometimes think that it's actually the fault of the owner.
No, I think you could say that with dogs far more than cats, that people are knowingly or unknowingly indulgent of dogs and encourage certain behaviour traits like demanding, barking when left and so on. But with cats, I think the things that some of us find attractive are very unattractive to other people. So, for instance, this very independence that you mentioned is very attractive to me. I like the idea of being able to go out and leave my cat and he can come in and go out as he pleases, which I couldn't do with a dog.
But what I was trying to say was that, I mean, do owners then tend to mollycoddle their cats and not give them that independence which they inevitably need because it's natural?
I think so, but again, what you've never had, you don't miss. And if the cat's never been brought up to face the rigours of the big outside world and to enjoy hunting and fishing and shooting, then you're not necessarily depriving him by keeping him indoors.
All right, well, we'll find out. Peter Neville is here to answer any queries that you may have about your cat, our cat psychologist for today. So give us a call now. Good morning, Sheila Dragon from Sholing.
Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Sheila.
I have a black ordinary moggy male. All he does is bites my arm. During the night and all, he's got to keep biting my arms.
When you say
It's normal.
when you say biting, Sheila, do you mean
He draws blood.
mouthing? Oh, he's actually getting quite serious.
He puts his two front paws around my arms,
Yeah.
and then my wrist goes into his mouth.
Right. Has he always done this?
Yes.
How old is he now?
He's 18 months old, but I've only had him for 9 months.
Right. Where did he come from before that?
It was my daughter's boyfriend's cat. And they split up, and he said, "It's your cat. I don't
And
want
Mum-
it." So Mum and Dad took the cat on.
Right.
But he's very, very nervous.
Right. Now, when you pick him up normally to give him a
He's
cuddle,
not affectionate.
He doesn't like that
comes
at
to you
all.
For affectionate.
Mm.
I'm housebound, so I lay on the bed a lot.
Yeah.
He comes to me only if I'm on the bed.
Right. Does he go outside?
Not very often. He does a couple of times a day, but he won't stay. He runs away from cats or,
Yeah.
and then comes straight back in and then runs around the place like a maniac.
Right. Okay. It sounds to me like a combination of two things. One is a lack of early experience, perhaps, in being handled and being
Yeah, he was
exposed
on his
to.
own all the time, all day.
Right. So he won't have learnt the sort of barriers to sociable behaviour that having a sort of frequently handled, gentle upbringing as a kitten. And that means that he will switch very quickly from apparently peaceful behaviour into either predatory behaviour, where he's grasping you and biting you, or fearful reactions. And quite often we see if you hold a cat, cuddle him close, they seem to enjoy it for a while and then they suddenly
That's right.
switch and become quite ferocious. I think the best thing with this one, Sheila, is to try and replay his childhood a little bit. Keep him with you by all means, but make sure that the action, as far as affection goes, occurs on your terms.
He really follows me around like a dog.
Right. Switch him off a little bit. Try and get him outside a bit more so that he extends his own capacity to cope with change and sees you much more of a source of affection, but it only happens on your terms. We want him close to you, so if necessary use a basket inside to keep him with you, but denying him the opportunity to overdo it.
You see, you come in during the night, wake me
Yeah.
up, biting my arm. You get under a quilt to find my arm,
Yeah.
bite me, and then he lay down on the quilt alongside of me and go to sleep.
I think it's time that you blocked the success of that behaviour and provided lots of affection in short
Well,
doses.
he's absolutely ruined.
Yeah, you might need some help.
Leave me cat food.
you might need some help, and you might need to perhaps stage your introductions with him so that he gets a little tidbit and then a pat on the head, and that's all. Keep it short and frequent,
Yeah.
and certainly don't let him get into grasping your arm. Keep a water pistol handy for night times. It sounds cruel, but you're actually not doing him any favours by letting him indulge in this way,
No,
and he'll get worse.
he will.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay, then.
And if there's any continuing problems, despite your best efforts, then have a word with your vet about a little bit of short-term drug treatment.
Well, he did that. It didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. Maybe we had the wrong drug, or perhaps we needed to use it a little bit differently. But I think it's mainly down to you and what you let him get away with,
Yeah.
but at the same time making sure you're nice to him under other conditions.
Okay, then.
Good luck,
All right.
Sheila.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Good
Bye-bye.
luck.
Bye-bye,
Bye, Sheila.
Sheila.
Terry Osborne from Twyford.
Hello.
Hello, Terry.
Hello, Terry.
I've got a problem with my little cat. I think I've caused it myself.
hmm
When I first got her, actually, she was a rescue cat, and she'd been dumped in somebody's garden when she was only 2 weeks old.
Yeah.
So she'd never been weaned, she'd never been taught to wash herself, she'd never been taught anything.
hmm
Um,
How old is she now?
she's 4.5,
Right.
which, she's a fabulous cat, actually, terribly affectionate, but she will scratch the furniture.
hmm
And
Okay.
it doesn't exactly go with the tray lot.
Where is she doing it? In the living room or
Yes.
everywhere?
In the living room.
In the living room. Okay. I think there's two sides to this problem. One is the need for her to keep her claws in trim, and she'll be scratching to shed the sort of outer layers of her claw to keep the points sharp. But the other thing which we often miss is the fact that scratching is also territory marking behaviour.
Yeah.
And it leaves a very visual signal, obviously the scratched furniture, and it also slides a nice personal smell down the furniture from the bottom of the cat's paws. So, in fact, we really should be thinking in terms of perhaps providing an alternative scratch board for the nail sharpening bit, but also treating it as a slight insecure behaviour, in that she's needing to mark territory indoors, which ought to be secure. Now, do you have a cat flap?
Yes.
Now, have you ever had other cats coming in through the cat
Yes.
flap that aren't yours?
One that's not ours and one that used to be ours until she chased it out.
Okay. Now, you imagine what it would be like if you came home and found someone else in your living room. You would want to change all the locks and change the doors. And really that's what happens with our cats, that normally they don't need to mark indoors, but they do mark outdoors where there's lots of competition and other cats from nearby. Now, cat flaps can be wonderful things, but they do destroy inner security. And what I'd suggest you do for 2 or 3 weeks as a first measure is to board up your cat flap and let your cats in and out, so that that door establishes indoor security for you and your cats. The need then to boost her own presence by marking the territory inside should then go away. Now, there's lots of other things to do as well, so if that doesn't have any effect, come back to us next time or drop me a line, and Sally will give you the address later on.
Thank you very
But
much.
that's your first step. That may be all you need.
Okay, Terry, good luck. Go and board up the cat flap, Terry. Okay? Sylvia Howarth from Milton, Portsmouth.
Hello.
Hello, Sylvia.
Good morning. My daughter lives in Kent, and recently she's had a little cat of hers run down, and the person that run the cat down took it to the vet, and he had to amputate.
Yeah.
Now, I had a row with her father, and he said it'd been better to have the cat put down rather than take the leg off.
Right.
It's the back leg, and I said, no, the cat will accept that and adjust itself. Is that right?
Animals, you know, are marvellous things at coping with disability, and especially animals with 4 legs, because they've got 3 to walk on if one of them is removed, whereas we've only got 1 to hop about on.
Yeah.
Now, I had a cat myself when I lived in Greece that had to have a leg amputated, and it was absolutely amazing that within a week of the surgery, which you can imagine is a pretty major trauma, this cat was hopping around and jumping back up onto furniture, and within 3 days of being let outside again, he brought in a bird. Now, I think that tells us quite a lot about the way they adapt and cope with disability. So, assuming everything's all right via your vet, then I wouldn't even think again about having the cat destroyed for that. He'll cope. Make life easy for him. You know, don't give him steep climbs to get up to food or difficult pathways to his litter tray, and help him practice using his one leg and getting his balance right by giving him short steps, you know, telephone directories and so on to pop up, and you'll find that he'll cope very well.
Yeah, and there's another problem. She has 4 dogs and 3 other cats. Will they accept the cat as well? Or would they make his life a misery or anything?
I think usually they will be interested in the fact that the cat's profile of movement and his own behaviour will have changed.
Yeah.
But they get used to it as well. They won't necessarily round on him because he's suddenly at a disadvantage.
One of the dogs is down to the cat's level. It's a little Yorkshire. Probably should be quite interested.
In my experience, even a disabled cat is more than a match for most dogs. So I wouldn't worry about the dogs.
Right, thank
Let's
you
put your mind at rest then, Sylvia, I'm sure.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, Jean Washer from Godsill on the Isle of Wight. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Please, why does my pussy so hate my husband?
How old's your cat?
About 5 now.
Right.
It was a stray that walked in on us when we were on the mainland.
Right. How old was she when she appeared?
Well, I don't know. Took her to the vet to see, or took him to the vet to see, you know, if everything was all right. And he said, he was still young,
Yeah.
under a year. So I don't know. But, you know, he lays down, his ears back and snarls away.
Right.
It looks as though my husband really ill-treats him. And he doesn't.
And he doesn't. He wants to be
No.
nice. Right. Did that happen from day one?
Yes.
I think you may have an inherited problem. Some cats do differentiate quite markedly between men and women.
See, I knew dogs did, but I didn't know cats did that.
No, I've seen quite a few, and it's usually the husband who comes in for it. It's very rarely the wife.
But my husband's listening to this because he seems to think he's the only one.
No. There is probably a society for husbands who aren't liked by their wives' cats or something. No, I think the thing to do is to assume that it is the result of an early experience, perhaps some nasty handling or some cruelty or something.
He said he hadn't been physically ill-treated,
Right.
but he did wonder if...
Okay.
But I wonder what can, if I'm not there and he's really hungry, he will allow him to feed him.
Right, that's the first trick, that
Yeah.
you divide your cat's daily ration up into about 6 meals,
Yeah.
nice small ones, and you get your husband to take over the responsibilities of feeding the cat.
Yeah.
And lots of treats and tidbits as well, so that your husband becomes seen as a source of something good. The next step is that your husband mustn't do what most men do, which is walk up to the cat with great big mitts and say, I want to be friendly, bend over him and try and grab him,
Yeah.
right, because it's quite frightening.
Yeah.
What we want is your husband to be nice and gentle. I think, again, a good first step is for you to have hold of the cat or restrain the cat in a carrying
I do
basket.
sometimes. I take him up and hold his paws down so that my husband can give him a little stroke. But
Right.
he allows that for a second and then
Okay.
woof.
Let's get
Well,
him used to sharing your husband's company.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to have him on a harness and lead or in a cage and just get him used to being in the same room as your husband.
Yeah.
With your husband walking past the cat but not actually trying to handle him or do anything very much at this stage.
Well,
Coupled with being let out to be fed by your husband, you should start to see a shift in the cat's behaviour to the point where your husband can then approach your cat at other times. Initially very gently, avoiding putting those big mitts forward first.
Yeah.
Present his face first, but this is important to have the cat in the cage.
Well, I could say, yeah.
Yeah, because...
Just in case. I mean, he never has.
No, we don't want his eyes scratched out.
No.
No, the cats greet each other by faces first.
Yes.
And paws are weapons. So let's have them nose to nose, and then sliding in a little tickling finger through the bars of the cage very gently when the cat looks relaxed. And I think you'll find you'll be able to rebuild.
He might not.
Jean, I
Oh,
wish
how
your husband luck.
Kind. Thank you so much.
Gosh, sounds frightening.
Doesn't
I'd get a new cat, I think.
I'll get a new husband.
Or a new
yeah.
husband. Jean, we don't mean it.
No.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Janet May from Winchester. Good morning.
Good morning. I haven't actually got a problem at the moment. I want to avoid having one.
Ah, now we're looking
In a
at
few
something.
weeks' time, we shall be welcoming a little kitten
Right.
into our home.
Mhm.
It's only about 10 days old at the moment, so we're
Right.
still at the stage of just going to see it. And
What sort is he? She?
just an ordinary mog.
A moggy, right.
Mm.
Now, avoiding behaviour problems it is essential, because with puppies and kittens you can avoid 99% of behaviour problems if you get things right from the start. So I'm very glad you phoned, Janet. You've obviously been to the home and checked the breeder.
Well, it's not exactly a breeder.
It's a friend.
A lady who has
Right.
got a moggy puss which found
Right.
herself pregnant.
Okay, so an accident. Now, I hope that home is a real live place, and what we're looking for in that home is lots of other goings on. So preferably dogs and cats and kids and lots of ins and outs and visitors, so that your cat is exposed to as huge a variety of events and people as early as possible. The next thing to do is to phone up the lady who owns the mother now and say, from 2 weeks to 7 weeks is the crucial time for handling those kittens as much as possible. There's lots and lots of evidence coming out now from lovely research projects looking into how to make sociable pets, that this is the key time for kittens.
Oh.
And the more she handles them, the better your pet will be when he come to you at a sort of 6 or 8 weeks.
I think she probably doesn't have a lot of time for handling the kittens because she works, but I
Right.
think the teenage girl who acts as a
Yeah.
child sitter for her daughter
Right.
will be more than happy to handle the kittens. I think she will handle them day and
Right.
night if she's given the go-ahead.
Well, okay, that sounds like a good way to get paid, doesn't it? Lots of handling by lots of different people. As soon as the vaccinations are up to date, little trips outside. The more the merrier, or the more the better at the early stage. When the kitten comes to you, keep her in one room for a while, so that she gets used to the new smells, gets used to one room of the house, which will be like the core to her new territory. And let her out into other rooms, one room at a time, with you supervising her and holding her all the way. Have you got other cats and dogs already?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No, we did have a cat who died last autumn, which is why we've been on the lookout for another kitten.
Right.
And there were one or two things about our old cat's behaviour which I would have changed,
Mm-hmm.
but they weren't what you might call serious
Right.
problems. And we didn't have a biter or a whittler, which seem to be the two things that most people ring
My
up
bread and
about.
butter, yeah.
But there were definitely aspects of her behaviour that I would have
Yeah.
changed if I'd had the
Yeah.
chance, but she was too old to do that.
Okay.
So this time I want to get it right.
Yeah, at this stage it's about handling exposure as early as possible. So as soon as your vet's got all the kitten's vaccinations done, take her outside, go with her, help her explore her new territory, help her meet other cats while she's non-threatening. As a young kitten, she won't pose so much threats to local cats, which means that she can approach them and they won't necessarily attack her. Later on, when she's bigger, she'll be a bit more competitive and she'll need to hold her own territory. But you'll help her to do that now. Obviously give her a nice warm bed in a nice secure corner and a covered litter tray, so that she's nice and secure at that most vulnerable of moments. And move that litter tray steadily nearer the back door, and then finally upend it when it's dirty out onto somewhere in the garden where it's going to be useful for her to go, that isn't going to worry you. And then you'll have a nice well-adapted cat who can cope with change, who can cope with life, and who goes outside and enjoys herself, but comes into a nice, warm, secure zone with you in it.
Enjoy a new kitten then, Janet.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for your call, Janet May from Winchester. Getting a new kitten. We'll have more problems for you in just a moment, Peter. Good morning, Philip Allen from Lox Heath. Now, Philip, you have an extraordinary problem, don't you?
We did have. Unfortunately, we had to have our last Siamese put down because it was a wool eater. We seem to have been very bad, had ill-fated fortune with Siamese. We've had one that caught leukemia at an early age. Our last one was a wool eater. We went to the vet, and the vet advised us that there was no solution to the problem. If we couldn't live with it, then we'd have to have the cat put down. I'm just wondering if this is very common, if John's come across it before. We did go back to the breeder eventually, and she said, yes, that whole litter turned out to be wool eaters. And it was quite horrendous. You'd sit the cat on your lap and you'd be nestling it, and the next thing you do, you'd look down and there was a hole in your woolly the size of half a crown.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting, Philip. I'm actually doing a survey on this very problem because whilst there are a number of things which you can try and which do help resolve that problem, in some cases, in others they just don't seem to respond. And I've got about 70, 80 survey forms back now, and some of these cats are doing literally 1,000 or more pounds worth of damage.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is phenomenal. Others are very mild forms, and they will be very specific. We had one that was just eating knickers. We had another one which was just eating tea towels, and left other fabric alone. Right. So it's quite broad. It's not just Siamese. It seemed, of the survey results I've got back, it's probably 75-80% Siamese of all types. The second most common breed would be Burmese, then the cross Siamese Burmese Tonkinese, an odd Rex, the Orientals. But interestingly, I've got a couple of Moggies as well. So it's what can I say? It is apparently tied up to continuing infant behaviour in the cat. So they're quite often needers and dribblers as well.
Yeah.
But as you say, it can be quite an expensive problem. What I'm going to ask you to do, Philip, I know it's your last cat, but could you write to me and I'll send you this form to fill in with a bit more background details. I'm going to plug it all into a computer and see what trends we can find. And whatever I get out of it, obviously I'll make sure that you and listeners of Radio Solent get the gen.
We would like another Siamese.
You would like another Siamese.
To go through that again.
Okay, when I started this survey, I went to the National Cat Show in London, and I went down the Siamese show benches, and every single shower there had a wool eater. So it tells us that the problem is quite prevalent. However, many of them have been responsible and stopped breeding with queens that produce wool eaters, and some of them have changed their breeding lines and so on to try and cope. So there are plenty of breeders, and of course the majority of Siamese cats don't eat wool, but I think what you've got to do is research the problem before you buy. Now, without obviously advertising, I do know one or two who have been wool eating free up till now, and I can gladly put you in contact with them.
Thank Thank you very much.
Okay, Philip, we'll give the address out in a little while, all right?
Right.
Where you can contact Peter. Thanks for your call. Jenny Rawls from Fawley, good morning.
Oh, hello. Yes, I've got 4 cats, and one of them was in a fight. They regularly tend to come in with a scratch here or, now and again. And this one had a problem with the eye, and we took him to the vet, and it seems that part of the retina has been damaged, and it's now flat. Just a sort of a round circle is completely flat when you look at the eye. We had some antibiotics and some anti-inflammatory, and then that didn't work, and then we went back again, and we had some cream to put in the eye, and he was cleaning in the side of his eye and sort of making himself sick about sort of 4 hours afterwards. Well, he's gone in this morning. He's having his third eyelid sewn over for 10 days because the vet says that it will heal quicker. Excuse me. Now, he's coming back this evening, and he doesn't want to talk to either of us because every time we get hold of him, it's either cream or he's into the cat box and up the vet again. And I'm just wondering how to treat him. I mean, do I treat him just normally, or shall I keep him away from the other 3 cats, or do I make a lot of fuss of him, or just leave him, or...
Right. Okay, Jenny. Lots of TLC. For any cat coming back from the vet, because it's a fairly major trauma. I mean, you can have the nicest vet doing the nicest things, but what you're doing is you're taking your cat away. It's been handled by strange people in a strange environment, a fair amount of distressed owners and distressed pets around, because that's what vets are for. They're there to help the sick.
Yeah.
So when your cat comes back, make sure you've got a nice warm room ready for him, a nice, preferably again, a covered bed, nice and warm, for him to sort of settle back into things.
Yeah.
Lots of short but frequent contact. It comes back to the same thing as dealing with nervous cats.
Yes.
Don't overdo it.
Yes.
Don't indulge him up, too...
No.
I was going to say up to the eyeballs, but...
But that would be what I would want to do, just sort of pick him up and cuddle him. But
don't let him settle and go to him frequently. Go to him every quarter of an hour and just reassure him without necessarily looking at his eye and subjecting him to that sort of close handling. Keep the others away from him for half a day or so that he can settle back in.
Yeah.
But you should find that sort of relationship from you and access from the other cats, who will also prop him up a little bit and help him through, he'll make a quicker recovery, and you won't have this sort of fear developing of being approached.
Yes. Will he sort of get used to being a one-eyed cat, as it were, temporarily, and hopefully, everything will be all right in 10 days. I mean, I don't think he's going to see that well out of the eye, but at least hopefully he won't be losing it.
Well, you'd be surprised. Again, we talked about a cat with a leg amputated a bit earlier.
That's what prompted me to ring you.
Cats have got forward-facing eyes, and their field of vision is still very large, even with one eye. If it's his right eye that's gone, he'll miss things slightly behind on the left.
Yeah.
But don't worry, he will cope, and he'll modify his own behaviour to cope. And hopefully it will help that injured eye get better.
Well, let's hope he's all right then, Jenny, when he comes back.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Bye.
Terry Ellis from Totton.
Good morning.
Good morning, Terry.
Good morning. I've got a cat. She's 5 years old, and 2 years ago we had a cat door fitted, and while she'll go through the cat door if we tie it up so that she hasn't got to swing the door.
Right.
But she won't open it herself. I wonder if there's anything that can encourage her to do this.
Hasn't worked it out yet, no?
No.
Has she ever been through it and got a tail jammed and she's gone through? Because
No, she hasn't.
that
no.
puts some off.
No.
No, that hasn't happened. And
No.
you've never had her being terrorised on the other side by a rotten local neighbourhood Tom?
No, but when we first had it, it was a terribly windy day.
Right.
And as soon as you open the cat door, the wind blew in something terrible.
Right.
And I think that's
put her off.
a bit. Yeah.
Okay. I would suggest that you first of all check to make sure there isn't too big a drop on the other side of the cat door, and if there is, put a step up so that she hasn't got to sort of fall down on the on the other side.
Yes, I see.
The next thing is to actually open your own door and try to encourage her to go through it for a food reward on the other side. Sometimes you can do it by trailing a piece of string through the door and tying a bit of food on the end and getting her to chase it through.
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yeah.
And then do the... oh, excuse me, I've got cat flu, I think. Sorry, feline upper respiratory disease, we have to call it now.
Peter have a little cough here for a moment. Sorry, Terry, about this.
The next step then is to close the door and replay the game.
Yeah.
And hopefully she will learn that the door isn't necessarily a threatening or a thing to be afraid of. You may never get used to it, I have to say. If you've been trying for this long, she may not want to go through it. And it may well be that she actually prefers you to open the door, because when you open it, you're there as a nice sort of secure bridge as she goes out into the great unknown, or as a welcoming security gesture as you open the door to let her back in. And it may be that she doesn't want to face that transition on her own through a cat flap.
Yeah, she'll go through it hundreds of times a day. If we tie it up. Well, in the summer, that's okay, we do that. But in the winter, of course, when we really need the cat flap to be used, she won't use it.
What you might like to do is sort of put a little tunnel out on one side. It depends how involved you want to get in DIY. But you could then, miss the drafts, and she could just go through the
Is it because the actual flap is a bit too heavy?
It could be. That's why I was coming back about the closing on the tail, that sometimes the resistance is too high.
It's not particularly heavy because it's a plastic one. But
there is.
It does bang as it sort of as it goes through the closed position. It does cause a bit of a bang.
Try sealing the actual contact flap onto the frame of the cat flap with a bit of foam or a bit of this draft excluder, so that there's a softer landing for it, and it doesn't bang. Alternatively, there is a cat flap around which is like a circular one, which brings problems in carving a hole in the door. But it's got like projections of sort of plastic sheeting through, and it's something like the hoops that dogs jump through in circuses, and the cat will go through that. There's no resistance to it really, and as obviously the cat goes through, the plastic bits bend with the cat and then close back shut as she's gone through, so she doesn't actually have to push against a solid object.
Good luck then, Terry, with the cat flap. All right, thanks for your call. Okay, now let's turn to Wendy Seymour, who's at Thornhill. Good morning, Wendy.
Good morning, Wendy.
Good morning. I wonder if you can help. I've got a very elderly arthritic cat. Now, the vet's got her on low-dosage steroids, so she doesn't suffer too much. But he has suggested we groom her because now she's old, she's not agile. And her coat really is, well, it's a mess.
Is she long hair?
No, she's not. She's just scruffy. And she's never liked to be handled, so we've always treated her on her own terms. But she does need to be brushed, but she's so aggressive when we try.
Right, okay. This is one that comes into cat world quite a lot from Persian breeders who have trouble trying to groom the knots out of the the very fluffy Persians and chinchillas and so on. I think with a long-established resistor to being handled, you'll have your work cut out. Probably the best thing to do is to get a strip of old carpet and lay it on top of a table and put the cat on it and then pull her back slightly. It might be a two-person operation.
Sounds like it, yeah.
But her instinct will be to put out her claws and hang on.
Yes.
Which means that you can then start to groom very gently. I mean, when you first do it, don't even be trying to groom her. Just be trying to get her used to the sensation of the brush near her and going down her back. Don't groom the sensitive places. Just go down her back and the back of her head. As I said, I think you'll need two people. But if you can get her used to that, then you can gradually go on to those more sensitive places.
Keeping the claws busy too, isn't it?
That's right. It's keeping them dug in, and of course she's got to go forwards or retract the claws to get them out to swipe you.
I see. Yes.
Now there is a cat muzzle that a friend is currently producing. It's at prototype stage at the moment. We're looking at it to see whether muzzling the cat, and in fact like a hood with vicious birds of prey, being in the dark calms them down, we hope. So it may be that if that's out in 2 or 3 months' time, you'd be able to utilise that.
Could be useful.
Yeah.
Good luck, Wendy. Stick at it. All right, our final caller today is Georgina Luke from Bursildon.
Good morning.
Good morning, Georgina.
Good morning. I know you've had quite a few calls on Siamese this morning.
It's always the way.
Yes, no, I have another one. Now, I have this Siamese. Now, all he really wants to eat is raw meat. Now, I buy him about £5 of melts a week. And I do cook them in the microwave, but he does eat them, but he's not keen. And also liver I give him, which he likes fresh. Now, I'm worried because I don't think that he's getting enough vitamins in his diet, etc. Now, I've got 3 other cats. One I just had spayed yesterday. Now, they eat normal sort of whiskers, that's all they'll eat. and I've got an Alsatian, which is no bother. But this Siamese, I'm just worried, and it's so thin and lithe, if you know what I mean, looking.
Okay. The Siamese are, as we talked about earlier, they have some fairly strange diets sometimes.
Yes,
They're also, I think, fairly finicky. They like what they like, and they'll turn their nose up at everything else. Did you say he's eating raw meat or raw melts?
Well, he prefers
both?
them raw, melts and liver, any raw meat at all.
So he'll eat mince and he'll eat stewing steak and so on. Okay. In that case, don't worry, because the diet that the cat as a predator is adapted to is a meat diet. And if you really want to be, giving your cat what he's adapted for, what you should give him is a mouse. Now, I know everyone's going to jump up and down, but the mouse is got all the nutrients, all the vitamins in the body itself, and all the fur and the bone gives roughage, which is an important part of a cat's diet, which you don't get in the canned foods.
Well,
so,
he has come in. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
He has come in with there's a couple of neighbours, a couple of doors away, and they've got pigeons, and I'm quite worried because he's sort of he has come in with these pigeons, and he's actually stripped their feathers off.
Don't worry. I mean, he's being a predator. I know it's fairly distasteful for us that the cat brings in all sorts of bodies, but that's what they're evolved to be. If he's eating, what you mustn't do, perhaps to finish, is that you shouldn't just feed offal, and too much liver and melts continually will mean that he's short in certain vitamins, and you might be overdoing it on others. So go for the fresh meat diet, the muscle meat diets, in preference, with occasional meals of liver if he likes them.
What about these melts then? Is that all right for him?
Occasionally, don't feed them continuously.
Well,
try and mix it in with, if you can, tempt him with occasional meals of fish. Some of the dry diets are perfectly good now. You're actually feeding a much better diet than continuous canned diets, and you're also doing his teeth much better, so much more good rather. So gristly meat as well. Give his teeth something to work on.
And a variety of food. Really. That's what you're trying to say, isn't it? Georgina, thanks for your call this morning. That's about it, Peter. I think you've done extraordinarily well, so kept you busy, haven't you?
Can I make a last-minute appeal to the Chancellor?
Yes.
On behalf of all pet owners, because we all pay VAT on pet food, and of course we don't pay VAT on our own food, and it's all dreadfully unfair, and poor old cats aren't getting the sort of food they want because it's expensive.
I don't know whether it's going to be too late, Peter. I don't even know whether he's going to hear you, but still, nevertheless, we will wait to find out this afternoon, but I shouldn't think it's very hopeful.
That and my mortgage down, please.
Yes, that's a good one. I like that one. Now, we'll sort out, we'll give you Peter's address in just a moment, of course, where you can write to for any help, or if you want to get forms from him or whatever, after the next record. But thank you for joining us again, Peter.
It's a pleasure, Sally.
All right, our agony uncle, if you like, who's been here all morning answering your questions. No doubt we will see you again.
I hope so.
Peter Neville, our cat psychologist who joined us. And don't forget, I will be giving you the address in just a moment.